எல்லாருக்கும் இனிய புத்தாண்டு நல்வாழ்த்துக்கள். Auspicious occasion even amidst this lockdown. So concept of staying alive, what it is. When this epidemic hit the world and also India, we're thinking as to, since we're working in this field of the civilization knowledge and knowledge of India, we wanted to find out what is it that India has been doing right across centuries and millennia, across the land, in being able to successfully stay alive through such hurdles. These are hurdles. And as a civilization, we're going to face this hurdle and many more hurdles, both in the past and the future. And how are we as a land, as a people, as a community, handle these hurdles, face these hurdles and overcome them? Let's see those. For example, we have an epidemic today. Because it is pan-global, it's called pandemic. That's a word, coined word, but actual word is epidemic. And there are three factors to it. One is to prevent it from happening. Two, when it actually hits us, how to contain it. And third is to cure it. So it's a three-pronged approach, basically, we're looking at. And
yeah, so if you really look at it, what is the essence of staying alive? There are two aspects that have to be balanced. One is, on one side, you have to prevent it from coming. And if the crisis does hit you, then அதை எப்படி நம்ம மேனேஜ் பண்ண போறோம்? ஸோ கிரைசிஸ்னே நம்ம எடுத்துனோம்னாக்க நம்மளுக்கு வந்து டிஃப்ரெண்ட் ஃபார்ம்ஸ் ஆஃப் த்ரெட்ஸ் இருக்கு. சிலது வந்து மேன்மேட், சிலது வந்து நேச்சுரல். மேன்மேட்ல நமக்கு இப்போ நடக்கிற மாதிரி ஹெல்த் கிரைசிஸ் இருக்கு, சில சமயம் வார்ஸ் இருக்கு, சில சமயம் இன்டர்னல் ஸ்ட்ரைஃப் ப்ரொடெஸ்ட் இருக்கும், சில சமயம் ஈகனாமிக்கல் கிரைசிஸா இருக்கும், பொல்யூஷனல் கிரைசிஸா இருக்கும். நேச்சுரல்ல தான் நமக்கு தெரியும் ஃப்ளட்ஸ் அண்ட் ட்ராட், சீசனல் கிரைசிஸ் வந்துட்டே இருக்கு, earthquakes, volcanoes, sometimes even from the skies, meteor showers மாதிரி. இந்த ரெண்டு கைண்ட்ஸ் ஆஃப் த்ரெட்ஸ் நம்ம பார்த்தோம்னாக்க இதை சர்மவுண்ட் பண்றதுக்கு ரெண்டு ஃபண்டமெண்டல் அப்ரோச்சஸ், philosophical approaches if you will. இப்போ man-made crisisனாக்க typically it is better if you try to insulate yourself from the trouble that is around you. So isolation through insulating yourself through isolation is one of the most typical response. And natural disaster naka நம்ம இருக்கிற இடத்துக்கே பாதிப்பு வந்துடுது. So அப்போ நம்ம இன்சுலேட் பண்ணி அதே இடத்துல இருக்க முடியாது. So we have to look for moving out of that place. So அப்போ வந்து you need an insurance that you can integrate and move with others. You need to have that insurance that you can fall back on other people so that you can move away from there. You will find help from outside. So insulation you have to find help from within, and in case of having to move out, you need help from outside. So இது ரெண்டுமே நமக்கு ஒரு பேலன்ஸ் வேண்டிருக்கு. So insulation, isolation வேணும், integration வேணும் with the world. So அதுக்கு நம்ம என்ன பண்றோம்னாக்க நம்ம இந்த மாதிரி lockdown is typically an insulation kind of an approach. So நமக்கு வந்து self sufficiency is one of the most important aspects. Discipline is very important. Leaders who can guide you through this, and your age-old wisdom, because now your ability to interact with other people becomes less. So what is it that you can rely on about from your own wisdom? That becomes key. அதே integration பண்ணனா எப்பொழுதுமே நம்ம வந்து ஒரு open mind, tolerance, friendship, as well as you have to be powerful, because only if you are indispensable to the world will they want to come and help you out, bail you out. Others other than your own local body. So இந்த ரெண்டுக்குமே நம்ம பேலன்ஸ் பண்ணி எடுத்துன்னு போனோம். அண்ட் இதுதான் நம்ம வந்து மில்லேனியா ரொம்ப ஆதி காலத்துல இருந்து நம்ம இந்தியன் சிவிலைசேஷன்ல ரெண்டுக்குமே ரொம்ப அழகா பேலன்ஸ் பண்ணி எடுத்துன்னு போயிட்டு இருக்கோம்.
See, when you look at this, she spoke about balance. Balance comes from two aspects. Only then you can balance two aspects, and it's basically twinning. And we have a special idea for it. It's called Ashwini twins. So they're twins. So they show you the balance approach, not only in Ayurveda. Of course, they're divinities for Ayurveda, but all aspects of life. So let's look at, and it's concept of sama, equal.
சமமா எடுத்துன்னு போறது. இது வந்து நம்ம அதனால இந்த மாதிரி ஒரு பேலன்ஸ், ஐடியா ஆஃப் பேலன்சிங். ஸோ நம்ம மனப்பான்மையே நம்ம சிவிலைசேஷன்ல ஒரு மனப்பான்மை என்னன்னாக்க பேலன்ஸ். நம்ம எப்பவுமே ஒரு எக்ஸ்ட்ரீம்க்கு போனதே இல்லை. எப்பவும் இந்த பக்கம் போவோம், அந்த பக்கமும் சாஞ்சு ரெண்டுக்குமே ஒரு சமமா ஒரு சமநிலையில நம்ம பார்த்திருக்கோம். அண்ட் ஃபண்டமெண்டலா இந்த அஸ்வினிங்கிற கடவுள் வந்து இந்த ட்வின்ஸ் வந்து நம்ம ஹெல்த்தோட நிறைய அசோசியேட் பண்ணியிருக்கோம்.
The definition for Ashwini is very interesting. Ashwini twins is very interesting. Hita ahara, mita ayasa. Mita ahara, hita ayasa. Translated into English, it is affordable food, appropriate exercise. Affordable exercise, appropriate food. So it's a balance between your activity and your food intake and what you express. So it's a balance between diet and your lifestyle, balance between your rest and your work, balance between your nourishment and your treatment, balance between prevention and cure. So it's a nice balance. So this is only affordable. He's not asking you to extravagant exercises, nor is he asking you to have extravagant food. No fancy food, no fancy exercise. Daily regular activity and daily regular palatable food, vegetarian food gives you a nice balance in life. That's a beautiful balance it talks about. It's so simple and beautiful, very simple to any aspect of balance. Ayurveda takes the best balance. Let's look at what is this balance. There are two concepts in treatment. One is called Swasthavrita and the other is called Aturavrita. Swasthavrita is swastha, health. So preventive. So Ayurveda looks at almost 80% of the focus of the treatment of Ayurveda is all towards health care, where you have good health, maintaining good health. Whereas and only a smaller portion is towards curing of diseases. So if you're healthy and well as a man, as a family, as a community, as a civilization, it's more important as to treatment when a disease hits you. So preventive is more important here and social medicine is more important. And treatment of diseases is of lesser importance. Whereas if you compare, in the case of modern medicine, allopathy, there's a lot less focus given on preventive medicine, preventive care. So whereas more importance given to after a disease hits you, what do you do for treatment? So the focus of two different schools of medicine are different. In this, the balance is we must have both A plus B. So you need to have preventive medicine where you are all comfortably healthy, and when something hits you, you know how to go aggressively with modern allopathy. That's a balance of the two. And look at this particular medicine treatment of Swasthavrita. We had a nice concept in this Indian civilization through the ages. What you had is, you have very clearly had something called Charaka. Who is this person Charaka? It's not one single individual. Charaka means a person who walks, Chalna, Charati, one who walks from village to village, community to community, grama to grama, nagara to nagara, treating people, helping people in food habits, hygiene, well-being. So it's Charaka. So the Charakas were part of this ethos of this land, starting from Afghanistan in the northwest to Burma in the northeast to Kanyakumari and Sri Lanka in the south. We had Charakas traveling all over. So they were people who were keeping good health of the civilization as a whole. Look at this interesting painting of Charaka done by a Russian. It is there in the Varanasi, Banaras Hindu University, Bharat Kalachar Museum by a famous painter called Rorik. Actually, the Roriks are three generations of painters, like how we have Rabindranath Tagore family of great painters. For Russians, equivalent was this. So he's painted Charaka beautifully for us. And look at the word. Roga is disease. Arogyam, arogam, without roga is good health. So arogyam is freedom from disease. And English, we have a saying, health is wealth. But it's a lot more in the Indian thought. Arogyam, mahabhagyam. Bhagyam is fortune. So good health is a big fortune, not just wealth. It's a much bigger thought. And again, there's a balance in cure between poison and medicine. Shushruta says this beautifully. The poison is also medicine and it's comparable. If a drug is not administered properly, it is dangerous. Even if a drug is converted to medicine, if it's properly prepared. And good medicine, poison, if improperly prepared or improperly administered. So there's a good balance. So Charaka and Shushruta both speak about the balance between poison and medicine. This is a fine thing because you need antivenom, serum. In one treatment, it is medicine. One treatment, it is vaccine, it is medicine. So vaccination is also like that. So how you balance it is the beauty of all this. And look at this. We have in India, especially in Tamil Nadu, we have this very famous saying, Marunde unavu, unave marundu. Beautiful number, Tamil Vakyam. So medicine is food, as well as food is medicine. Sapara vidam, maintaining of good health, food hygiene and all this. This is what is called swasthya. So that is a rakshanam that saves you. And that is important. So that gives you in this moksha, in this very life it gives you. So in your cure it gives you. So deliverance from any sort of vicious disease is good health, good food. Many of the diseases come from having improper food, incorrect food. So that is the balance of life. And look at this, in staying alive, very important aspect.
So ultimately, fundamental basis or the secret of staying alive nu paatha oru pakkam vandu preventing, இன்னொரு பக்கம் managing. So how do you prevent? You prevent crisis by aligning with nature and also by taking proactive steps. So you align on one side so that you don't cause disturbances, and you also be proactive. So in case it's going to come, you are ready. The other side, vandachu, ipo enna panna porom? You have to be ready with the know-how to cure. So proficiency venum. At the same time, sufficiency venum. Ena sonna mari number, when you have to contain and when you have to insulate yourself, then you have to be sufficient within yourself to be able to handle and manage it. So proficiency, sufficiency, rendu venum. And idu rendukku ena edukku நம்ம பாத்துக்கோனாக்க, we all know that effort and cost of managing are heavier than the cost of preventing it. But idu rendukku namakku enna vendirundhirukku? Successful leadership is the key, it's a bottom underlying thing for both these aspects. So kadasila namakku crisis da vandurthu, nam ithanellam panni prevent panninalum crisis vandu you can't tavukka mudiyadhu. So sila samayam namba crisis face panniye aan.
So you have this famous quote from the Roman film, Quo Vadis, where to from here? It's a very important aspect in life. So now we are facing a lockdown, and we have faced many lockdowns in our civilization like this, and for different times. Some of the lockdowns we have faced this during wars. At different wars across centuries we have faced, and we have had this epidemics many times in our civilization, and during protests also, which are more man-made. So you've got different types of lockdowns we have faced. One of the earliest lockdowns reported is in the times of Krishna, about 5,100 years back. During the Govardhanagiri episode, for 7 days, the whole Bridge Bhumi was under lockdown, all under one particular shelter. So the 7 days lockdown was already recorded in the Mahabharata period. You have had a famous lockdown of that. And in wars across times, siege, battle siege. So the lockdown happens not just for 15 days or 20 days or 30 days, it happens for 6 months, 1 year lockdown, where every area, citadel, fort, any place was self-sufficient, right from water harnessing, as we showed in this particular image, to all the crops, to everything. So that was this was very much a part of Indian thought to be self-sufficient. Well-planned self-sufficiency was a part of Indian thought during all wars. That is how they prepared and went through it. It's happened thousands of times in India, nothing new. And we have also had lockdowns repeatedly during the freedom struggle of India through bands, starting with the first band that was requested for by the first nationwide band requested during the Rowlatt Act Satyagraha, and thereon many times have had this. So India has gone through these sort of bands and Satyagraha repeatedly for different period of time. And unfortunately, after independence, one particular state has had a lockdown due to certain problems created by ourselves because of separatist action, especially in the case of Kashmir, repeatedly. Fortunately, after 7 decades, we are successfully now coming out of it. So this sort of, there are many types of lockdowns we have had. And look at this very interesting lockdown that we talk about here. In Arunachal Pradesh, the tribals, they have a system, especially when any disease hits them, they have such sort of lockdowns. They had this 40, 50 years back. They practiced it when they were still tribal, and they were looking at it from their native perspectives. Now they've lost a lot of their nativity in the so-called modernization, and people going in making them non-native. So they had these two particular rituals where they had lockdown, they had seclusion, they had this process. And so there's a beautiful film you can speak about.
So this is just an example actually which has come to light for recent in the lockdown la namak theriya vandhu, where Arunachal Pradesh revived it after 40 years. But needy parts of India they have been similar processes or similar steps taken, but unfortunately we have all forgotten that in the process of urbanization and modernization.
I will take an example. About a decade back, when I was talking to the Toda tribals during one of the program on TV, they said that any tribal who comes back from a village back to their Vana, their tribal is actually a wrong word to use. It's a very derogatory word to use. I prefer to use the word more respectful, honorific word called Vanavasi. They are living in the Vana, they live in the Vasi, so they are actually Vanavasi. Tribals is a negative word. So with the Vanavasi, they said when they go to a Grama or Nagara and come back to their Vana, it is mandated by their practice to live at the border of the Vana for 1 or 2 days in a secluded hut to ensure that they don't get the disease of the Grama into the Vana and share it with the Vanavasi. So
and
they,
the Vanam.
And the Vanam. So they were, so for them, Vana was a pure place, whereas the Grama Nagara was an impure place. So the diseases came from the Grama Nagara. So they're very clear. So they had to undergo quarantine of 1 or 2 days and then only come into the Vana. So look at the side, same idea, be it in the Arunachal Pradesh in the northeast or be it in the Toda tribals of the Nilgiris. You can across the land, even the tribals had a very nice organized system of ensuring that they don't get infected unnecessarily by diseases that are imported into their ecosystem.
So, number fundamentally, so lockdown situation, it's again, it comes back to a balance of self-sufficiency versus interdependency. So any scope of a body, if you see, whatever be the level of that, be it a village or be it a city or be it a state or be it a nation, you have to be able to balance both. At times, you should be able to be open enough to be interdependent with the rest of the community. And at times, if needed, you should be able to be self-sufficient enough to be able to go into a state of insulation. So, adukku rendu vaartha svavritti manga parasparashray manga. So, parasparam, interdependency, where the thing comes from knowledge sharing, technology sharing. See, fundamentally, when we look at other aspects, which unfortunately we can't touch upon right now in this short limited time, if you look at the civilizations world over, millennia trade, the trade has initially was not on essentials. Community, civilization, ancient civilizations have been essentials. They have integrated with or interfaced with other civilizations mainly for sharing knowledge, technology, know-how, learnings, inspiration. These kind of soft things is what they have shared. Whereas for essentials, every civilization has been self-sufficient and has evolved its sufficiency based on avanga oda local desacharam, andanda naadu, andanda naatoda nalavaram, and the சூழ்நிலை, அதனோட atmosphere, அதனோட climate, அதனோட topology, அதெல்லாத்தையும் வச்சிருந்து அங்க வளையற வளைச்சல் என்ன மாதிரி plants வருது, என்ன சாப்பாடு, இதெல்லாம் பேஸ் பண்ணி they were self sufficient. So that is the balance that we have to also evolve as we mature into what we call as modern living.
And look at this interesting, this is a nice example she's got about what is it you do when you have a lockdown. A very beautiful example of a butterfly which comes from a pupa. It also undergoes a 20-30 day of a hibernation lockdown process where it prepares itself to soar once again when its lockdown period is complete. So each of these lockdown periods that we face this time or the past or the future, whenever it is, it's a time that we strive to build self-sufficiency in ourselves. So when we are free to again flap our wings, we do it with strength. That is what is important. So the substrata of this is self-sufficiency, strength. So that is what we need to build up, innate qualities, innate strengths that are skills available to us, so that when we are again able to flap and go fly free, we fly with that strength. And preparing oneself purposefully is what matters. So these lockdowns, which has happened now, unfortunately, may happen a few more times. We don't know for what purposes, but we know how to use it purposefully. That is the skill that we should have. That's what our earlier had. That's what nature has. Nature has such lockdowns. Our earlier generations have had it, but they've all used it successfully. And if you look at this, there are 3 perspectives. Such lockdowns, such difficult times, such calamities bring forth to us 3 sort of leaders. PMG is what we call P, G, and think. One P stands for Prajapati. Praja, people, Pati, leader, Prajapati. One who leads his people is a Prajapati, and the other is a Manu. It is from the Indian word Manu, that you get the English word man and the word human, mankind, humane, women. All this comes from the word Manu, from the word Indian word Manushyam, Manushya. All these words comes up in one word. And we'll see what that we'll expand that word. The root of the word. We are not talking about individual person or anything. We are talking about the root, how this word. And it's from this word you got across the world, you got this Moses, Musa, Menes, all this you got from this. Okay, and the third word is Guru. Guru, the word Guru itself means one who uplifts, Gurutva, one who attracts with knowledge. So a Guru is one who attracts you and uplifts you with Dharma.
All the stories you will find focus has been given to three kinds of leaders. So sometimes you'll find the Prajapati is more important. Sometimes you find Manu is given more importance, and sometimes it's the Guru who is given more importance. Sometimes he is Brihaspati, sometimes he is Shukracharya, whether for the Deva or Asura. So these three are the three types of leaders that we encounter through and through our legends across different legendary events and figures. Ramar Kalathliyum சில பேர் இருந்திருக்காங்க, Mahabharata Kalathliyum, Itihas, இது ரெண்டு Itihas periods, you'll find these different kinds of leaders. And like he was saying, there are various versions of the numbers of Prajapati, but like they say, idla oru Prajapati, you can understand the role of a Prajapati if you look at this Prajapati called Daksha. The Varta Daksha naliye, it means dexterous, comes from the same root.
English word dexterous,
dexterity. So skilled. So namak vandu edavadhu oru terrain, so oru civilization a group of people வந்து ஒரு சிவிலைசேஷனா மாத்தி அவளுக்கு ஒரு லிவிங் ஸ்கில்ல கொடுத்து அவளை சேர்ந்தாப்புல ஒரு எடுத்துட்டு போறது வந்து is the role of a Prajapati. Whereas a Manu, if you see, always he is a person who has taken people across over a crisis.
So whole mankind, people. So Prajapati is one who leads his people, his area, whereas Manu is one who leads the whole mankind.
So he is responsible for bringing in order within that civilization, setting laws, and these are relevant for that crisis and that time period. So andanda situation ku thandapla ennala orders and law vadumo adella, that's what he brings in. He brings in the framework that will help people tide over that crisis, and that you can find such rules across civilizations.
And look at this, very interesting one. You have the word Manvantara. What does the word beautifully mean? Manvantara is a time frame. What is the time frame? The time between any two Manu, the Antara. The word Antara means interim, the gap, intervening gap, Antara. So between any two Manu is a Manvantara. That's the time frame. So you have the civilization, the people face a crisis. From that crisis, somebody leads you to come out of the crisis and gives you framework to live by for that period of time. Till the next crisis hits you as a whole civilization, as a whole human race, when you get one more leader to come to lead you. So the gap between these two is the Manvantara, a Manu. So it's not just a biological time or a time, astronomical time. It's also time between two leaders who lead the mankind as a whole. So that is so we knew crisis and we gave a name for it. And who is a Guru?
It means to lift, to pull up. So that is why the word for gravity, much before gravity concept was introduced in modern science, you have had Gurutva Akarshana, which is in Indian thought. It has been spoken about many thousands of years ago. So that is the word for gravity, Akarshanam, because of heaviness. And a Guru is one who is heavy with wisdom, and he attracts people towards him or her, and gives them the knowledge of Dharma to derive the mental strength to go through crisis and lead life in harmony.
And look at this very particular thing which our Prime Minister said about one of the qualities that a leader, a Prajapati, a Manu, a Guru gives is a good leader gives is what? Enthusiasm. In these times of difficulties, you can't lose your enthusiasm. And all hope is a big, nice word in English language. Asha, hope. More than that is self-enthusiasm, not to lose it. So that is the real strength. So in difficult times, in lockdowns, what is important is enthusiasm. And we have a beautiful story, 7,100 years back, when Rama was dejected. for having, when Sita was kidnapped and taken away from him, the Rama was, it was Lakshmana who uttered this verse to give that enthusiasm to Rama to sort of buck up again. So it's all what you Tamil say in the English language, buck up, come back up, enthusiasm, the key way to keep the spirit alive. Of course, today people keep the spirits alive in many ways. They're very spirited, but the key thing to all that is enthusiasm.
So, therefore, when you encounter a civilizational crisis, the three things that we have to do are L, L, and L. Look for these three leaders in our civilization, listen to their advice, and loyally follow their orders. So these three things, if we do, we will be able to overcome any particular crisis that hits us as a total community, as a large body.
So the key thing is the evolution. This is an evolution process, parinama.
Because every crisis, it heralds a change. I'm sure even after this lockdown, when all the countries are going to come back out of the lockdown, there is going to be a marked difference in how the world is going to function post-COVID-19 vis-a-vis how we were. Because each of us have had time to contemplate, ruminate, and we would have discovered so many truths amidst all of this crisis as to what is really important, what are the priorities. So there is going to be a major change, and obviously this change comes because of a give and take. We are going to be losing something to get this particular wisdom. And namakku vandu nama civilization we have had a beautiful word for such evolution, because change is what evolution is all about. Adukku romba nalla vaartha parinamamnu solluvom, which means it's an effect. It's an effect arising from a cause. So we have always spoken about evolution as something like a cycle of cause and effect. So one is therefore at the through all this crisis and the lockdown, one is only keeping ourselves enthused enough so that we can march towards better days with good leadership.
And when you come out of this, what does it need? The factors is called rejuvenation, because you need to rejuvenate. Because after the crisis, what do? You should look for rejuvenation factors. What are the rejuvenation factors that any civilization land looks forward to? In that, you should know that this parinama change happens through pralaya. Pralaya is an important aspect. So there are 4 types of pralaya. Actually, when you talk about, there is the daily is a pralaya. Layam, when you have mridangam, tabla, drums, they call it layam.
Layam nalla apdiye layichu poradhu, apdiye blend aayi melt aayidudhu. So you blend into the layam. So when there is a rhythm of a mridangam, you just in that layam, in that rhythm, you just melt. And when the music blends with that rhythm, it's said to be that the song is said to be in layam. So they are together, they are fused. So andamari pralayam garde, we normally always get scared and think of the universal collapse. But number thought, there has been 4 kinds of pralayam. Nitya pralayam. So every night when we go to bed, we melt into a different dimension of consciousness, and that itself is a pralayam. And in the morning when you wake up, you're rejuvenated. Your blood is fresh. A lot of your cells, some of them would have died, and some new cells would have formed. So there is a rejuvenation happening every time you go to bed at night and wake up in the morning. Adhe madri naimitika pralayam, which are certain events which happen because of certain other causes like eclipses, earthquakes, and every full moon, new moon is also like a pralayam, naimitika pralayam.
Different changes.
Then you have avantara pralayam, which are very seasonal in nature, and then only you talk about mahapralayam, which is at cosmic scales, where galaxies or suns,
basically the vinasham,
the higher levels of destruction. But we've never ever spoken about things as destruction. The thought of Shiva as a god of destruction itself is a Western view of Indian god Shiva. For us, Shiva has actually been a god of regeneration. Of course, no doubt regeneration, that there will be a destruction, apra regeneration. But the focus was on regeneration and rejuvenation. That is why you have Shiva, as Chandrasekhara, Jadala vandu or Melissana Chandra. That is the waning moon. Adu chinnada poyum, adu before it gets lost, Shiva is supposed to hold it in his head so that he can give it back when it has to grow again. So that is what has been the essence of the civilization, that you always focus on rejuvenation and regeneration. So, like we said, how each of these different pralaya causes a change.
And look at these factors that you have for rejuvenation. So there are.
So fundamentally, what we've always believed is that there will be cycles in creation, in evolution, where you will fall down. So falling down is not an issue, but not willing to get up or address how to get up is what is wrong actually. And there are various rejuvenating factors.
Multiple factors. For example, if you look at an economy, there are many rejuvenating factors in the economy. For example, gold is a big rejuvenator. That's why people kept gold, saved it in their houses, underground behind their yard, kitchen, saved gold, because it was a rejuvenator every time. Similarly, Dhanyangalam, seeds, Bijam, Vedaihan, they kept it in the temple gopurams, because after any flood or fire or fight or anything, they can get back the seeds and restart life again. Similarly, the water bodies, the Yeris, the Kulam, the Kalwai, they are all rejuvenators after every problem to help restart life. Similarly, the forest, the Vanam, every Vanam was a sacred Vanam. It was a rejuvenator. So it was a topographical barrier and helped arrest various plagues and restart life. That was it. Similarly, for health, body, Ayurveda is a rejuvenator. For the mind, Dhyanam is a rejuvenator. And for both, coming together, yoga is a rejuvenator. So you've got different rejuvenators in life for different factors. Similarly, you also have knowledge as a rejuvenator. So knowledge is a rejuvenator, because in the times of calamity, you not only need technical knowledge, but you also need traditional knowledge. So this is a regular rejuvenator for you. Similarly, for the human race, you have dharma as a rejuvenator. That's an important factor. So how you need to live with dharma, within dharma, that's a rejuvenator for you. And practices, the achara. See, the two things we have.
Yeah. So, there is this word achar, which actually means good practices, good habits. And these kind of good habits, like
acharam, நம்ம தமிழ் ஆச்சாரம் சொல்லணும்.
இது வந்து நம்ம லோக்கல் ஏரியாக்கு தகுந்த மாதிரி நம்ம இந்த பிராக்டிசஸ் ஃபாலோ பண்ணனா அது வந்து தேசாச்சாரம்னு சொல்லுவோம். இந்த வேர்ட்ஸ் எல்லாம் ஆக்சுவலா இருந்திருக்கு, நிறைய இடத்துல கேட்கலாம். ஐ மீன் ட்ரெடிஷனல் இதுல யூ கேன் ஹியர், and these are things that we have to revive to bring back self sufficiency. ஏன்னா தேசாச்சாரம் is very important for self sufficiency. And இதுக்கு அடிப்படை என்னன்னாக்கா விசார், the thoughts. Vicharam is what? The thought, the underlying ethos. This has been the ethos across the civilization of self sufficiency, which has helped us tide over various kinds of crises.
So that's self-sufficiency.
So in the self-sufficiency நம்ம சொல்றோமே, இது நம்மளுக்கு எப்படி தெரிய வருது, எப்படி இருக்கு அப்படின்னு பார்த்தோம்னாக்க, இதனோட வேர்டே விருத்தி, ஸ்வவிருத்தி. அது வந்து the word comes, the vritraங்கிற word, vrith, which means like sticky, like a cloud. ஒரு cloud வந்து அதனோட stickiness மாதிரி அது hold பண்ற மாதிரி. So how the cloud holds all the raindrops and the particles together. So adu vandu and madri being contained, that is what is swavritti. And so every village, nammaloda pazhaya model of governance le paathomnaka, they produced and they earned their wealth, they spent it on themselves, and only a part of it was given to the central king, the kingdom, and the kingdom oda raja ku konjam pochu, ana mattadella gramame vechinde they planned and they used it. Whereas in the centralized form of administration, which came after the British took over, and which we continued with even after independence, everything from the Gramam goes all the way to the center, and then from there it comes back. So this is not been a very native model, but idu address pandradhukku நம்ம பஞ்சாயத்து ராஜா நம்ம திருப்பி கொண்டு வந்தோம். So ஒரு செல்ஃப் சஃபிஷியன்ட்க்கு என்னெல்லாம் தேவை நம்மள்ட்ட இருக்கா அதெல்லாம் அப்படின்னு பார்த்தோம்னாக்க, one of the essentials is water, and you want to talk about it. So annual rainfall, ipo நம்ம India, if you compare these large continents, Europe, USA, அதெல்லாம் பார்த்தோம்னாக்க Indian subcontinent as such comes third, and compared to the size of landmass னு பார்த்தோம்னாக்க it is pretty high. And இதுல வந்து நம்ம பார்த்தோம்னா our ancients had realized that we get rain in a year only for about 3 months, and for the rest of the year this water has to be stored and used. So which is why they created about over 9,50,000 indigenous water harnessing systems. So local water bodies create panni 6 lakh villages ku itna bodies create பண்ணிருக்கா அப்படினாக்க ஒரு கிட்டத்தட்ட 3 systems, 2 village க்கு 3 systems. So these 2 villages were self-sufficient for their water needs. And water needs, then you had sunshine all through the year. You had, they knew how to harness their local resources in a sustainable manner for their local industries. So industries, local industries using local products and manpower which are local. So in a way, if you see, these small bodies were self-sufficient. And idukku namakku aadharam engendhu kadikkiradhu pathina, we have Sir Charles T. Metcalfe. So he talks about in the British period, he talks about how the village communities are little republics having nearly everything they want. They seem to last where nothing else lasts. Dynasty after dynasty tumbles down. Revolution succeeds revolution. Hindu, Pathan, Mughal, Maratha, Sikh and English are all masters in turn. But the village community remains the same. In times of trouble, they arm and fortify themselves. A hostile army passes through the country. The village communities collect their cattle within their walls and let the enemy pass unprovoked. So they used to withdraw into their shell. They used to insulate themselves. They used to go inside like an armor. They armed and fortified themselves, and they had everything within themselves. And they would just let the hostile army pass through. If plunder and devastation be directed against themselves and the force employed be irresistible, they flee to friendly villages at a distance. But when the storm has passed, they return and resume their occupations. So these villages, ipo tavukka mudiyama, if that the army that's passing through, they turn out to be hostile. See, this is another beautiful point which we cover in our warfare capsule, which talks about the ethics with which India used to fight wars. Irrespective of which king, which region, yarku sanda irundhalum, they had certain norms, and that was to not disturb the village people. So it used to always be a fight between soldier to soldier. So andamari Indian army is going through some village, they had no problems. Avanga vandu veetukulla poitu insulate pannitaanga, no problem. But if it were plunderers and marauders from outside, like we had the Mughals and coming in and all the other Muhammad Ghazni, Gauri ella adu pinnadi vandavanga, when they came in, then the war ethics were very different, and therefore these people had to run away from their villages, in which case they had that balance of being interconnected with other villages to go and take shelter over there. So this one particular statement shows that balance beautifully with which they handled crisis. And he says, the union of village communities, each one forming a separate little estate in itself, has, I conceive, contributed more than any other cause to the preservation of the people of India through all the revolutions and changes which they have suffered, and is in a high degree conductive to their happiness and to the enjoyment of a great portion of freedom and independence. So in the mari tanma, in the self-sufficiency, forming ability to form a small estate amongst themselves and be contained, self-contained, as what has contributed to their preservation across all these millennia. The same thing is also being said by Reverend Bishop Caldwell. So they are little republics having everything they want.
See, we know about the ribbon building in Chennai. This ribbon, which is the head office of Madras Corporate. He says the same thing about how we were all, each village was a little republic, and it lasted and lasted because they were self-sufficient. And he made this statement in House of Commons in 1832 in London.
So idillendu namakku enna theriya varudunga, so the king was there, and like the particular village would come under different kings at different times depending on which king won the war, but the village as such was never disturbed. They continued to remain little self-sufficient republics, and therefore if you see, it was actually a bottom-up structure where you had physically strong local bodies which were self-sufficient, and together they formed a strategically powerful central civilization. So this was what helped the this brought self-sufficiency to the entire nation itself.
And we have three interesting words here: Swarajya, Swatantra, and Swavritti. What does the two words mean? Swarajya is Rajya. Swa means obviously self. So Rajya is to rule. In 1947, we got Swarajya to rule ourselves. But what is Swatantra? Tantra means technique. Tantram, technique. So self-technique. What has unfortunately happened is, we have not employed the self-techniques of India in the last 70 years, whereas we have had a very alien socialist model imposed on us, very unfortunately. So because of which we could not experience our own techniques to come back to prosperity after 300 years of plunder. Very unfortunate, because an alien model just failed, not only in India, failed everywhere else in the world. It's been tried. We have been forced with such a model. That means what? We are trying to drive our car with our handbrakes on. So that was more difficult. What is the next thing? Swavritti, self-sufficiency. Because only when you have self-rule, self-techniques, then you can have self-sufficiency. Only when you have self-sufficiency, you have strength. When you have with strength, you can face all problems. So these three form a very important aspect in administration and how you look for the goal of just not nation, but as a civilization as a whole.
And we talk about Panchayat Raj and reviving Panchayat Raj, and we talk about how they were panchayats. But the panchayat is not just about administration. Their panchayat has to have a goal, and this self-sufficiency was the goal. It was the driver. Without this as the driver, just having a local administration body is just having an empty shell. So these panchayats and Janapada, which form
Jana, people, Janam, Janapada,
Republic.
people. Pada, foot. So people were always on this word.
So these form the crux and they form the dharma of the Indian civilization itself. Ipo dharmangra vaarthaiye actually north la paathanaka dharma garda vandu religion nu eduthuvaanga. But dharma garde what it means is what you bear. Namba enna dharanam pandrom. What is it we bear? What is the trait we hold? So that is dharma. So
character. Character is dharma.
Everything has some characteristic. And in case of a human, the beauty of it is it changes with the roles you play. So whatever role play you have to assume a different character.
The spot.
And this efficiency has been the essence of our panchayat system earlier. So if you really look at it, if we have to be self-sufficient today's context, we have to have a very good balance between traditional and modern, ancient, what is recent, what is proven, what is pioneering, what you may call stagnation or evolution. Renduthiyo analyze panni, we have to come with a balance, but a balance which is addressed or aligned with nature, with harmony, and which is aligned with sustainability as the goal. So fundamentally, we have to draw a line: mentala, sentimentala, containmenta, contentmenta, survivala, sustenance. There is a very fine line. Survival pakuroma, sustenance pakuroma. There is a very, very fine line. So like we said, again, it comes back to how do you prevent and how do you manage and keep the balance. So இதுக்கெல்லாம் நம்ம இவ்வளவெல்லாம் நம்ம இந்தியால பத்தி இத பத்தி சொல்றோமே, நம்ம வந்து இந்தியால இத வேற ஏதாவது ஒரு எவிடன்ஸ் இருக்கா, and have we really done something to show that we have taken such steps அப்படின்னு பார்த்தானாக்கா, this is a beautiful story. So this is a story about vaccines, and we have written about it extensively in our book Brand Bharat. So we have seen how these charakas, they were physicians who were going from village to village, and நமக்கு வந்து இந்த மாதிரி எபிடமிக்ஸ்க்கு சில வார்த்தைகளும் வந்திருக்கு. மாரின்னு சொல்லுவோம், இன் ஜெனரல் மகாமாரின் அப்படின்னா வேர்ட்ஸ்.
தமிழ்ல வந்து மும்மாரின்னு இருக்குன்னா மழைக்கு ஒரு மாரின்னு பேரு. சோ மூணு விதமான மழை இருக்கு. சோ மும்மாரி. And there is a connection between rains and infectious diseases. ஏன்னா மழை காலத்துல தான் நிறைய infectious diseases வரும். அதான் நீ பாத்தீங்கன்னா உருதுல வந்து பீமாரின்னு, of course that word comes from the Persian word again, mari, bimari. Okay, opposite of bimari. So how is across, not just across India, but even beyond Afghanistan into Persia, you have this word mari, bimari, mahamari, marak, death. Mrityu, so all the same thing. So all these epidemics were collectively called as Mahamari or that which kills.
அதனால நமக்கு வந்து மாரிக்கு வந்து there is a deity. நம்ம வந்து சவுத்ல மாரியம்மன் சொல்றோம். அது வந்து நார்த்ல வந்து சீதலா தேவின்னு சொல்லுவாங்க. And various forms மாருபாயின்னு வேற சொல்லுவாங்க மகாராஷ்டிராலலாம். And so interesting combination என்னன்னாக்கா மும்பைல Matunga, which is the hub of South Indians, you will find a Marubai temple there, and where all South Indians will go there for Varsha Varsham adla anga vandu ammanku the offerings kudukradhukku padaikiradhukku. And in the Seethala Devi romba interesting enna pathina avangaloda vahanam vandu kazhuda kaiyila vandu thodapom, and idu vandu moram vechirupanga kaiyila. இதெல்லாம் என்னன்னாக்க and தலையில சில சமயம் அக்னின்னு காமிப்பாங்க. And இது and இவங்களுக்கு வந்து ஆஃபரிங்ஸ் படைப்பு என்னன்னாக்க எல்லாம் இளநீர் எல்லாம் குளுமையான பொருட்கள். என்ன எதுக்குனாக்க இப்போ யூசுவலி மாறினாக்க they associated with அம்மை, and இதுல வந்து அதனால அந்த அம்மை விழைச்சு அந்த பெருக்கி எடுக்கிறதுக்கு அந்த மரமும் தொடக்கம் அந்த அசோசியேஷன்
cleaning things up.
பட் இந்த கழுத வந்து எதுக்குனாக்க கழுதையோட பால் is supposed to be a soothing agent, especially for skin infections. So ஈஜிப்ட்லயே கிளியோபாட்ராக்கு வந்து கழுத பால்ல வந்து அவங்களுக்கு டப்ல குடிக்கிறதுக்கு கொடுப்பாங்க.
Bathe in donkey's milk. It was supposed to be very what you call healthy for her skin to look radiant.
So most of these skin infections வந்ததுனாக்க அதனால அந்த கழுத has been her வாகனம். And நம்ம ஊர்லயே நம்ம வந்து நிறைய இடத்துல சொல்லுவாங்க வீட்டுல குழந்தை நச்சுன்னு அழுதுருந்ததுன்னா அது வந்து அழுத மூஞ்சி சிரிச்சுதான் கழுத பாலை குடிச்சுதான்னு சில பேர் சொல்லுவாங்க. அப்படின்னா அந்த இரிட்டேஷன் இருந்து அது மாறறதுக்கு கழுத மெடிசின். பட் எல்லாரும் நம்ம வந்து வேக்சின் இன்னைக்கு எடுத்தோம்னாக்க இட்ஸ் credited to Edward Jenner in 1796 who introduced smallpox vaccination in England.
The word if you see vaccination comes from the Greek word vaka meaning cow, so that's why you get the word vaccination. But whereas you have had vaccination practices in India that goes back at least 40-50 years before him, as here recorded by Dr. J.F. Holwell. He says how in the group of Charaka went from village to village inoculating people before a season of infection so that you kept them all safe. So process a mission they prick with a small instrument the blood vessels and then they sort of vaccinate people. So this is a practice of India, inoculate people and keep them safe.
And they record that so when Edward Jenner actually found smallpox vaccine, so until then they have studied the Indian inoculation and they have written a lot about it and they have used it to learn from it and come up with the vaccination. But once a vaccination was found, see,
in England, India did it already.
See, India where this was a system. See, a particular group of Brahmins would move around small towns before onset of summer. That means Varsha and the summer and the period community they would go and they would. So there was a discipline. Varsha adu poi adu kandipa pannu. So the preventive steps were taken very meticulously. And அதுக்கு வரதுக்கு முன்னாடி the people had a regimen. ஒரு வாரத்துக்கு fish, milk, ghee சில பொருட்கள்லாம் எதெல்லாம் உணவு எடுத்துக்க கூடாதோ அதெல்லாம் எடுத்துக்க மாட்டாங்க. And then they would undergo the vaccination. So there was discipline, meticulousness. People had this idea. But அப்புறம் Jenner இது பண்ணப்போ what did they do? They banned the Indian system within India and they brought in Jenner's system. But அத வந்து இவ்வளவு வைட் ஸ்ப்ரெட்டா ஒரு சிஸ்டம் மாதிரி கொண்டு வரல. So அதனால என்ன ஆயிடுது? By then இந்தியால smallpox வந்து large scale ஒரு epidemic மாறிடுது. அது வரைக்கும் there was no record of it being an epidemic until then, which is what they say. And இது மட்டும் இல்ல 1767 இல்ல 1731 லயும் இருக்கு again அந்த இன்னொரு ரெக்கார்ட்லயும் இருக்கு. So they used to call them.
He calls the people who went around village to village curing people of this as Dunantri. They use English word, but we all know the word Dunantri actually here is Dhanvantri. So every one of these physicians who went to vaccinate people was called a Dhanvantri. Wealth, Dhanvantri. One was bringing you wealth. So because it was health was wealth.
And this Holwell was actually part of the London Royal College of Physicians. And so
he's not a stray man. He's a man of medicine of those days and one of the senior most medicine man who recorded this and reported it much before Jenner's time, and much so India, one of the pride of India we can say is we gave the concept of vaccination to the world, and we've been practicing for at least 1,000 years before that. And what did we call it? Smallpox was called Vasuri and cowpox was called Go Vasuri. So we knew the difference between the two. We had terminologies and we had vaccination for it, and this is all recorded very clearly, and we should be proud of it. In contrast, while India had vaccination, look at this contrast. In America, all of you have heard of Yale University, the premier universities. Actually, Yale University was started with funds from Madras. Since this is a Chennai Citizens Forum, I'd like to state this. Yale University initial seed fund was money collected from Madras. That's why there's a strong Madras-Yale University connect. That's why we're showing it here. And this is the second president of the Yale University who says, don't do vaccination here because if people are going to die of smallpox, you can't beat fate. You can't trick fate with vaccination and save them. So if they are to die, let them die. Look at the thought process there as to tricking fate, as to in India, how you do it with nature in season and vaccinate people as Vasuri, Go Vasuri and save people. Look at the contrast between two thoughts, the so-called scientific American thought and this.
And in fact, Europe, the 1300s to 1700s was era of a lot of plagues in Europe. And there is also this point that is being said about the famous poem Ringa Ringa Roses that we sing.
I'm sure most of you have heard of this poem in school, or either you yourself would have sung this poem, or your children or nephews or somebody would have sung this poem.
So it is said that it is not just Ringa Ringa Roses, pocket full of posies. It is actually ring around the rosy, a pocket full of posies. Rosies because they would have, whenever they had plague,
the box,
there would be a ring around the skin, blister vartakunadi. And there were so many people dying of plague that people had to carry posies which were flowers with certain smell so that they don't get the bad smell. And ashes, ashes we all fall down, or a tissue we fall down. But many people don't know that there is a second para also which says the cows are in the meadow eating buttercups, thunder, lightning, we all stand up. So that means after all the fall down, there was also standing up. And how did it stand up happen? Because the cows ate buttercups in the meadow. Seems very disconnected. So we just went and checked it up. Can buttercup is actually supposed to be a poisonous flower, both for animals and humans. But there is a variety in Sanskritam. It's called Kandakatuka or Kandira. In Tamil and Malayalam also they call it Kandiram. And Adila Patanaka. And Adila Patanaka, it is recommended particularly against skin diseases such as eczema, herpes, and various other skin ailments. So perhaps there was some nature cure that they did find at that period. And there were so many people,
plagues in India different times. So each of the plagues, how treatment happened for various plagues in India through the ages, ailments that happened.
But all these plagues, and interestingly, the plague, India, the 1896,
major bubonic plague.
And two leaders played a major role. One was Lokmanya Tilak, which is when he earned his title Lokmanya.
Lokamanya, not the Lokana, the whole world, everybody across strata of society, Manya, respect, Manya, respect. So he got the title Lokamanya because of the good work that he did across strata in the western region of India at the time of plague. Similarly, in the eastern region of India, Swami Vivekananda, when he was still a young Swami, he came up with a plague pledge.
And on the pledge, actually, you'll see that he says the British government will not vaccinate anyone by force. Only those willing will be vaccinated. So this shows that the English system of vaccination was still new and people were not very comfortable with it. And also the way they were trying to vaccinate people during the plague, it was not a very, it was a rather cruel manner. So that was thing. But then because of all this,
going back to the Chennai Citizens Forum, what we're talking today, let's look at this. You know how many people died in Madras province alone in 100 years back because of the cholera disease plague at the time? 1,17,000 people alone in Chennai alone died. And look at this, 1 crore people all over India in that 2-decade period, died because of this Mahamari. So we had this Mahamari different types.
But then this came to us, the first record of plague is only during the invasion of Muhammad of Ghazni around 1031, 1032 CE. And adukapro subsequent invasions la plague thirumi vandirukku. And then again 1885 and 90s la vanda plague vandu came from China again. They've been
from ships from China and Hong Kong.
Because of the opium trade. The British, they were conducting opium trade. In fact, even Central Asia, the Muhammad of Ghazni, adella vandadella kudi silk route la China la inda silk route la poi angende it came to India and to rest of Europe kala adu valiya dhaan poirukku. But that means adu varaikum நம்ம வந்து plague பத்தி அவ்வளவு பேசலனாக்க இந்தியால, it means that the disruption to existing systems, every time there is a plunder or there is a change in these kind of administration, British administration from Indian system, so these kind of disruptions have disrupted our preventive cycle, the disciplined preventive cycles that we were following. So that is why at those times we were hit by these kind of Mahamari. So we call vaccination in a way a prevented brand of India, because nobody has recognized that vaccines have been an offering from India, and eventually even the West could not, much as Yale University tried to resist, eventually it got accepted in the West,
all over the world,
and it has come back.
Proud brand of India, and we should claim it back and say it's our brand. Vaccination is our brand.
So now it's time to reclaim the brand once again, given that there are so many such epidemics that are continuously coming up and attacking the world. And of course, now we have a lot of modern research going on, but also we have a repository of proven traditional medicine system, which has been preventive focused. So, annike number vaccine kuduthirukona, there could be so many more secrets lying hidden in our traditional texts which need to be explored. And if you see today, India is a preferred partner for biotechnology and genome research. We have been doing a lot of strides. And for millennia, we have had a very open-minded genetic engineering policy. Today, we have a developed pharma and medical industry. We are a hub for clinical trials. And beyond everything, we have a very, very friendly foreign policy, which, just going by the current demand in the hydrochloroquine, how we have responded to the various countries of the world, it shows our friendly disposition towards the world. We have always believed in Loka Samasta Sukhino Bhavantu. So, idella irkave, it is time to reclaim the brand once again, not just for vaccines, but also to be a leader in showing people how to stay alive, how to continue to stay alive for millennia.
Since you mentioned about the vaccine and quinine and all that, there's an interesting article that you have written in our blog, and go read it, about the Quinine India Connect, especially of gin and tonic. What the British call gin and tonic and the quinine connect. This is a very interesting article, how it starts from the when the Anglo-Mysore War of 1790. There's a strong connect. That's why we are strong in that. There's an article, you can read it. It's in our blog, BharathGyan blog. Go ahead.
So given all this, so ultimately what we are trying to tell is, one, we have to reclaim our leadership position. But to do that, we have to first develop confidence and dare within ourselves. We have to have confidence in our civilization, our ethos, our ways, and we have to dare to follow them. So if we do that, we can emerge as leaders both in today's crisis, as well as we can show the world the secrets of staying alive across millennia.